So we think things are bad for the New York Jets right now, but the truth of the matter is, folks, they're even worse, and it's probably going to be that way for a little while. I'm Glenn Naughton with Jet Nation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. I couldn't sleep last night. I thought I was beyond the point of allowing this team to force me to lose sleep. I'm not, apparently. Why was I losing sleep? Not just because the Jets stink and because they're so much worse than they should be, but because there's not. If you look at the big picture, this is the Jets for the next few years. Why is that? Well, I don't see any world in which Aaron Rodgers hangs around to remain a part of this. And even if he did, do you want him to? Listen, I get there have been drops. I get there have been issues on this team that were not his fault, but enough of it has been his fault, and he will be a year older and probably a little bit slower than he is right now. Excuse me. Trying to win in today's NFL with a quarterback who can't move, not a great proposition, not a great situation to be in. So what makes this such a sort of dark road ahead for the Jets is that you're either stuck with Aaron Rodgers, which isn't good, or Aaron Rodgers retires, which isn't good. It's 6-1, half dozen of the other. Rodgers right now, looking at overthecap.com, according to Over the Cap, 2025, 2026, 2027, he's got 14 million in prorated signing bonus, and then another 7 million the year after that. So unless I'm reading this wrong, if and when this happens, that Rodgers moves on, all that prorated signing bonus that he's been paid, all of that comes forward to next year. So you're talking over $50 million in dead cap next year for Aaron Rodgers if he were to walk away. And again, if he doesn't walk away, you're stuck with a quarterback the teams are just going to blitz the hell out of, and he's not going to be able to get out of trouble. And that's if he stays healthy. I mean, listen, he hasn't made it through this year yet. And the odds of him making it through a season at 41, in which he's going to be, again, a step slower. So the Jets, there's a very real possibility that a few months from now, the Jets will be without a quarterback, will have a $50 million dead cap hit. Young players who I think it's starting to show there. And listen, you can blame the player. You can say, I've already seen it. Sauce sucks. Bree sucks. Garrett, fine, whatever you may believe. These guys are going to be, especially, I think Garrett, Dylan Terraman mentioned last night on my show, on our show with my live reaction to the game, that he thinks maybe Brees is the more likely um, to just be disgruntled to the point of saying, you know what, I want out of here. Let me go. And again, you can not like these players, but I'm not gonna even get into it right now. These are good football players, and if you lose them, you're in even worse situation than you are now. Then there's the fact we don't know. And by the way, that the search for a head coach should have already. I mean, I'm not saying it should have, as in it hasn't. I mean, it better have already started because Ulbricht's not the answer. There's and it needed to, and look, there's nothing against Ulbricht. He got thrown into a bad situation, but it needs to be an offensive guy. And you're not keeping Ulbricht. So the same way we heard, years ago that the Todd Bowles coaching search started after that embarrassing loss to the Bills. That's why, that needs to be the same thing here. It really, you could have made the argument it should have started last week. But as of right now, the Jets need to be working the phones with potential head coaches and looking for who the guy will be next year. However, the problem you run into there, how many owners, or sorry, how many coaches, how many GMs are dying to work for Woody Johnson with the instability this not it's not even the instability, because Woody has tended to hang on to his coaches for a long time, but the incompetence, the stench of the organization. You just came into a year with Super Bowl expectations and you were out of it before Halloween again. And that's what, again, like for right now, this minute, I'm talking about how the long-term picture is bad, and it is. Again, who's going to want to work for the owner? Are you going to have a quarterback? Because Aaron Rodgers is only one half of the equation. Aaron Rodgers retires, as I expect he will. Do you turn the keys over to a rookie again? Do you look for a veteran in free agency, a guy who's got some years under his belt? Is just as the case with GM head coach? How many quarterbacks are going to want to come here? Seeing what happens to every quarterback who comes here. Seriously, this organization is like a graveyard of quarterbacks. Young, old, good, bad, doesn't matter what you are before you arrive at one Jets drive. Once you get there, your career's over. So if I'm a quarterback, and if whether it's quarterback, head coach, GM, if I'm a guy who's in demand, who people want, the Jets are at the bottom of or not even on my list of places that I'm willing to go. And I'm letting my agent know. Don't even entertain the possibility of us going to the Jets because nothing good comes of that for anyone. Everything has to be a disaster here. It's crazy to think that this is where we are. And I said it yesterday, folks. I don't care that I fell for it. I'm glad. I'm actually happy that I bought in to the idea of this team being good because I got to have a few months of not being miserable about being a Jets fan. I got a 2, 3, 4, 5, however many months. I got a little vacation from this. I'm back. Trip's over. Back to reality. The Jets are horrible. The Jets are horrible now. They're going to be horrible for a while. You're going to have to convince a coach and GM to come play for Woody. You're going to have to find a quarterback. And even if Rodgers comes back, you've still got to take one. Let's say Rodgers comes back. You know what? You still got to draft a quarterback with that first pick. So that'll be 3 years in a row of using a first round pick on a team or on a guy that won't play. But at least next year, there won't be a reason for him to play because they're going to be terrible. This year, there were those of us who said, use the pick on a day one impact player. That was the phrase I repeated 50 million times. And Glenn, shut up about Brock Bauer. Okay, Brian Thomas. I said trade down and draft Brian Thomas. Add picks and get that guy. Get a pass catcher. It could have been Bowers, could have been Brian Thomas. But instead, they used it on a guy who wasn't going to play. Just like the year before, you take Will McDonald, the guy who wasn't going to play. But Glenn, Will McDonald worked out. I get that. And I said it, I've had a couple of people say to me, weren't you against the Will McDonald pick? Here's what I said about the Will McDonald pick 10,000 times. For a win now team, this is a bad pick. Meaning last year, before we knew Rodgers, when Rodgers blew out his Achilles, who cares? The season was over anyway. Didn't matter if you took a receiver or an edge, whatever. Rodgers went down and did. Had Rodgers stayed healthy all year, the pick was a receiver. You needed another pass catcher. Then coming into this year, same thing. You need a day one starter on a win now team. Didn't take one, took a backup. Now next year, first round pick, probably going to, well, if Rodgers is coming back, it's going to be a backup. It's going to be a backup quarterback. Now listen, is there a world in which you get a no nonsense GM who knows what he's doing and a head coach who knows what he's doing, and they let Rodgers know, hey man, we're not interested. Remember when Aaron Rodgers became available in trade, nobody else wanted him. So there's not another team on the planet that wanted this guy outside of the Jets and Woody Johnson, Joe Douglas, and company. So is it possible that the incoming GM and head coach don't want him and they have him move on? It's like, okay, great. But again, now you're back to the 50 million cap hit. Now you're back to having to draft a quarterback, potentially handing the franchise over to and ruining another rookie. There's really not a world where this goes smoothly. How many rookie head coaches have Super Bowl type success? It's I'm trying to think if McVay a rookie when he went to the Super Bowl? He may have been. But it's one in a million. So right now as you sit here October 2024, your probably best case scenario is that this team is competitive in October 2027, 28. And that's if the head coach and GM aren't a joke. So you got to fix quarterback, got to find a coach who wants to come here, got to find a GM who wants to come here, likely going to have to deal with a massive cap hit and an exodus of some of your young talent. It's worse than it looks, folks. Like I said, couldn't sleep last night because of how bad things are. Woke up and realized it's worse. Have a good one.